Alright, I'm still on the Marxism thing. Still January 1st, 2022. I can't stop thinking about this. I'm obsessed. I'm sorry. YouTube gives me infinite upload space, so I'm gonna keep uploading videos about this. You know, I've been in the room with the true believers. Several times in my life have I had direct conflict with a true believer of wokeness. I think the vast majority of people who are on the blue team, who are liberal, are not true believers. I believe that there is a specific kind of person that becomes a true believer for this kind of thing. Orwell describes this pretty well in his book, I think. There's a character in the book that works on the dictionary for Newspeak, and the main character, Winston, talks to him, and he's thinking in his head, he's like, wow, this guy is deep in the sauce, right? He's thinking, this guy thinks about it too much. And of course, by the end of the book, the true believer ends up in the same prison cell as Winston, right? They all get fucked by the system. That's the point of this book here. The only way out is to kneel to Big Brother. That's the only way out of this. The only way out of this social pathology is to go along with it. See, I think that Marxism isn't quite the right word. I think that's part of the thing here. I don't think that when I say it's Marxism that that's quite right. I think more generally, it's a pattern of human behavior. It's something where people will wield what looks like righteousness or justice or compassion, social justice, compassion for the marginalized, compassion for black people, women, gay people, trans people, right? They wield this thing, and then they portray anybody who stops them as evil. They portray anybody who opposes the movement as evil. And they get you truly, this is what they've been doing. They get your career ended, they get you fired from your job, they get you removed from whatever political office you're in if you oppose them. They're going to label you with a thing that nobody wants to be labeled with. And like I said, most people don't really know what's going on here. They don't see it the way that I see it, apparently. And I don't think the red team sees this either. I think the red team wants to believe it, and they will overestimate it. There is a real amount of Marxism. It is not the entire blue team. It's not even more than like 1% of the blue team that are these true believers. Too many people on the liberal side are simply open, like characteristically, if you're on the blue team, temperamentally, you're more likely to be open-minded. You're more likely to be progressive, open-minded. There's characteristics that go along with this. You're more likely to be compassionate. So when somebody comes to you and says, hey, we are trying to help marginalized people, you say, of course, yeah. And so you go along with it. And I can't blame you. I'm not saying you're stupid or anything. I just think that you're being tricked by Marxists or something that looks like Marxism. And you have to understand what this feels like. You have to understand that I've been in this room and I've felt this before. This is what gets me. I used to have nightmares about this. When I was in Los Angeles, I had a recurring nightmare about this where I would be killed by some sort of security or police, like some sort of some sort of authority with a gun would shoot me to death. This is a nightmare I would have consistently. I've had this several times where I would be shot and killed by people with guns that didn't know why they were shooting me and killing me. They were simply following orders for something, right? The nightmare would always happen the same way. I'd be in a situation where I'm trying to convince people that I'm trying to just, it's a vague thing, right? It's just a feeling, really. It's just the nightmare is mostly a feeling. It's very vague, but I am trying to talk to people, and then I'm being chased and killed for a thing, right? And none of the people are listening to what I'm saying, and none of the people really, there's not a single person there that really wants to shoot me and kill me, but they're all going along with it, right? It's almost like a witchcraft thing, or a witch trial, where really you accuse somebody of being a witch, and really there's only like one true believer. There's only one person there that really truly believes that there's a witch inside this other person. Everybody else goes along with it. It's a social pathology. It's like madness of mobs. And then somehow this ideology about oppression, oppressors, evil, where's the evil? The evil's in the oppressor class. You guys are the good guys. Go attack those guys, right? You get worked up into a mob. I've seen this happen with my eyeballs. I've seen it happen. I have felt it happen in rooms in small scales I've watched it happen at the BLM protests. I was living there while BLM George Floyd riots are going on. This is not, this social justice concept is not about compassion. It's about power. These people are taking power. And they're not being stopped because they disguise their attempt to take power as compassion. They disguise it as justice. You know, who wants to stand in the way of racial progress? Who wants to stand in the way of letting LGBT people express themselves, right? Nobody wants to stand in the way of this stuff. But you have to understand, BLM is not helping black people. Me Too is not helping women. LGBT pride stuff is not really helping gay people, right? I mean, we can get into arguments about how much these things have helped or not helped, but you must realize these groups are being wielded as political tools for an ideology. That's simply what is. That is simply what is. Simply what is. And, you know, it's very hard to distinguish between what's right and what's not right. Because, yes, black people were slaves. Technically, in 1865, or whatever the year was where slavery ended, the United States, like 12 million people appeared inside of the United States that day, right? If you think about from the perspective of the machine that is the United States, the Constitution, or whatever you want to call it, from a purely cynical, robotic perspective here, it's almost as if they signed a document and then 12 million people appeared inside of it, right? Because they went from being not human to human from a legal standpoint. So, and they all started with zero money, and they started with no opportunities or education. So, yeah, they're in a bad position, and that position obviously continues to maintain itself going forward. These patterns propagate themselves forward. It's very important to understand what is really happening, right? What is true about the situation, and then what is simply a storyline invented. You have to understand what Marxism is a pair of glasses. It's a way of explaining history. It's a way of telling a story about history. Because if you think about it, our current understanding of the world must include a historical understanding. It must. Look up the definition of Marxism on Wikipedia. It's a perspective for understanding history. It's really what it is. It's a pair of glasses you put on when you look at history, and it tells you how to understand it. That's what it is. All of history, there's a reason story is like 80% of the word history. History is just stories. Every history thing you've ever been told, ever been taught, was stories. Unless you were literally there, watching it happen, then it's a memory. But most likely, you were hearing a story from somebody. It could be a first-hand story, a second-hand story, or historians telling you a story. That's what this is. Some historians are fucking Marxists, and they're trying to tell stories that are going to encourage you to overthrow a system. This has happened in a bunch of countries. I can't stop talking about it because it's happening here. It's happening here. This YouTube channel is going to be I'm going to be banned off YouTube. That's my prediction, because I'm going to continue talking about this. And they're going to cancel me, because they have to. I'm the oppressor. That's what they're going to say. They're going to say, this is a white guy trying to maintain the status quo. I'm telling lies. I'm being racist. I'm being sexist. Whatever. They're going to throw these labels at me. If I gain any notoriety, I have 49 subscribers. Maybe I'll be stuck here forever. But the way I see it is, there's other people out there that agree with exactly what I'm saying, which is why I'm doing this. I spent a long time not saying anything about this because I felt like I was the only one. Then I found the TERFs, and I was like, holy fuck. I mean, I've told this story so many times. Truly, the TERFs were inspirational to me for profound reasons. I can't even describe to you how much of a mind changer it was to discover overit.com and all these women. I mean, you would think that these feminists would be happy that I'm, like, you know, inspired by them, right? You think that they would be, like, happy with this. But the problem is that I'm also accusing them of being partially Marxist, because I think patriarchy is real. I think that we have a patriarchal system that has dominated human society forever, right? It is not fair towards women. There are real reasons why it's not fair towards women. I can see that. However, to look at history and say that it was purely men oppressing women is a Marxist storyline. That's Marxism. That's a Marxist storyline. It was not purely a male tyranny over women. It was not purely women being owned and oppressed by men. I know that you're going to talk about how marriage and you're trading women back and forth and blah, blah, blah. You have to be able to distinguish the Marxist version of history from the true version of history, right? This is where Jordan Peterson gets in trouble all the time, because he talks about how really Was it an oppression kind of system, or was it more of a cooperative system, right? It's not like men always got a good deal for all of history, right? It's like some men had a good deal. Most men died in war. Most men spent 90% of their life in a mine shaft, or like on a farm carrying buckets of water around, right? This wasn't fun for men, So a lot of the feminist understanding of history is a Marxist understanding of history. Truly. I think Marxism started with feminism. That's part of the problem here, is that feminism is one of the oldest things that exists in this country, right? Marxism is also very old, and it's had its roots growing into feminism this whole time. So a lot of the feminists believe Marxist concepts, and they have believed these things since like the 60s. These are like very old things here. So a lot of feminists have been born into this, I was too. I was convinced of all these things as well. I bought into all these things. I took the same classes, right? I did take a sociology class that was taught by somebody who... I wrote an essay once where I had to write an essay about a movie I watched. And all I did was write about how the men were running everything, and the bigger their mustache was, the more powerful they were. It was like the pattern I noticed. And teacher gave me a little smiley face on that one. This is in college. This is a bullshit class. I got an A because it's easy to get an A in those classes. But I'm not like a stranger to all these ideas, because what happens here is when I talk about these things, they always say you have to educate yourself. There's things you don't know. You have to educate yourself. So there's either something I can't know because of my body, because I'm a white guy, or there's something that I have yet to reach that they understand that I don't understand. I've heard this so many times. You have to educate yourself. You're so close. These are just argumentative tricks. They always say, oh, you don't get it. You don't get it. You don't get it. You don't get it. For a decade of my life, I've been trying to get it, and I finally got it. It's Marxism. That's what it is. It's Marxism. I'm not saying we don't need social change. I'm not saying I'm not progressive. I'm not saying any of that stuff. Society can change 1,000 ways. I'm just not going to bow down to the Marxist ideology. I'm not going to kneel down to it. I won't. I will sooner die. I will sooner die. It's not because I'm a white guy. I think the very fact that you look at me and think white is because Marxism has been so deeply into our culture now, right? Why are we so obsessed with white and black? Why? It's because we're fucking obsessed with Marxism, because Marxism wants to split us into oppressor and oppressed. Yes, white people and black people exist. Yes, black people come from slavery, right? Most black people in the U.S. are descendants of slaves. ADOS, African descendants of slaves, right? American descendants of slaves. That's what most black people are, and that has an effect on their current standing, right? I'm not blind to that. I see that, but our current obsession with racial identity is Marxist. Our current obsession with identity politics is Marxist. Why is Kamala Harris a black woman, right? How come we talk about why is identity politics what it is? Why is it so powerful? This is a powerful ideology. It's so powerful. Why do we talk about Obama? Obama was half white, half black, right? Right? He's half white, half black. Look up a picture of his mom. And yet everybody believes Obama was black. Not a single person will say, oh, he was half white. Like, they know it, but it's not something they think about at all, right? In the Wikipedia page for cultural Marxism, it says at the bottom, often confused with identity politics. Who do you think wrote that? Who do you think wrote that? Why do you think they wrote that? Why do you think that on the first sentence of Wikipedia, it immediately discredits this thing, right? Why does it seem like, if you look at that first paragraph, please, if you're watching this and you don't know what I'm talking about, please go to the cultural Marxism page and read it. It is as if somebody wrote it to just push you away from it, right? They wrote it to make you go, oh, this isn't a thing. That's what they do. They tag it with stuff. They tag it with anti-Semitism, white supremacy. It says white supremacy in the first paragraph somewhere. This is what they do. This is how they discredit people. It's how they discredit Alex Jones, right? Alex Jones is the guy who just tells a story like anybody else. They got him kicked off of every platform. They've been trying to cancel him. I don't know who they is in his stance. In his case, he's been destroyed by who knows what. But that which canceled him, I believe. I don't know how to explain Alex Jones. I don't. But my problem is people who cancel. It's the people who are taking away speech. These are the enemy. It's just no matter what. Back in the 80s, the Christians were trying to stop people from blaspheming. You couldn't say God didn't exist on TV or whatever. That's a problem too, obviously. It comes from the right and the left, but right now the left is canceling real hard, and it's because they're motivated by Marxism. I don't know how else to say it. That's just what it is. It's what it is. It's how it be. Identity politics. What is that? What is identity politics? Why does one's identity matter so much? One's group identity too, right? It's not who you are as an individual. It's who you are as a group member. Are you an individual? No, you're a black person. Are you, like, that's what matters, right? And this whole intersectionality thing. I really think the feminists are the key to saving this right now. We need women to wake up to this. That's kind of how I see it. I think the women started it. They started it. They're the ones that made the transgender thing happen. The feminists caused the transgender thing, right? The Marxism like generated feminism in some way. Not all of it, but some of it. And then somehow that bond between feminism and Marxism has resulted in transgender ideology today. Somehow. It was an inevitability, right? Inevitability that we eventually got to a point where we can't distinguish between men and women anymore. For some reason. We have ROGD now as a result of an ideology. Really. Really. And it's very twisted up in all sorts of other things. All sorts of other things. You know, there's people making, it's like $1 trillion, not a trillion, but there's a lot of money being made off of surgeries for transgender people. That's part of what's going on here. It's always more complicated than just, you know, I'm not doing a univariate analysis here. I'm not saying everything's Marxism, right? It's complex. It's very complex. Capitalism is to blame sometimes. Capitalism loves transgender people because they buy a lot of stuff. They buy drugs and surgeries. So, there's a capitalist motivation for there to be transgender people, which should scare people a little bit, especially because the drug industry is involved now, and we cannot trust the drug industry. They're selling estrogen to people. It's weird. Like, the way they sell estrogen is very strange. You can't just put estrogen into a male body and turn it into a female. That's like, this weird insistence that hormones are the only difference is also kind of strange too, right? Somehow, like, if you just take hormones, now you become a different sex. And like, the only thing that makes men violent is testosterone. That's not true. It's testosterone plus a male body. We don't seem to have a good enough biological understanding. We don't seem to really have internalized that humans are animals. And again, the TERFs are the closest to this. They've realized that the human animal cannot switch sexes. We're not frogs, you know? We don't do that. We're not built to do that at all. So, and that's why I'm so obsessed with TERFs. So obsessed. They're so close. They're arguing with the same exact people I've been arguing with. Truly. Truly. Arguing with exactly the same people that I think are the enemy. They just see it for different reasons. They see a bunch of sexually perverted men coming into their spaces, and then they're trying to argue with these people, and then the arguments they end up having are exactly the argument you would have with a BLM person. It's indistinguishable from talking to somebody about systemic racism. It's funny because it's indistinguishable from talking to somebody about patriarchy. Because it always comes back to a system, or it comes back to social constructionism, or it comes back to the existence of objective truth whatsoever. Because what does the system do? It creates language that maintains the status quo. So if you're using every time I start thinking about this, I think it's designed accidentally. It's like if you've read Dawkins' book about memes, right? Memetics. Ideas evolve and design themselves to continue evolving and design. Like they get more powerful, right? Ideas possess us. Ideas jump from people to people. Memes kind of create themselves in a sense, right? This is just a very powerful meme. It's very difficult to argue with because it's grown to be that way. It's intentionally confusing. It's intentionally impossible to get to the bottom of it, right? Because you never feel like you get to the bottom of it. Truly, I'm speaking to TERFs most of the time here, really. If you're a TERF and you've argued with somebody about what is a man and what is a woman, you realize that you can't really get to the bottom of the conversation. You can't. You never get to the end of the conversation. There's no math equation you can use. That's why, I've been in these rooms with these feminists now, these chat rooms underneath the Voki's channel, right? I've been watching what they say. I've tried to refer them to videos, and often they're like, well, if you can't elucidate your point in one sentence right here, then you must not know what you're talking about. But it's like, part of the problem here is I'm trying to talk about a thing that's almost designed to not be talked about. It's insane. It's insane. It's crazy making to talk to people about this stuff. I've been in very deep conversations with people about systemic racism, patriarchy, heteronormativity, and cisnormativity. I've talked to all these people. They all sound exactly the same, as if I was talking to somebody who believed in God very deeply, right? Because the conversation always comes down to things that are like, what even is objective truth? Where does truth even come from? What is truth? What even is truth? What is that? Who creates truth? Where did truth even start? If I believe something, is it true? If I can touch something, is it real? If I believe I can touch something, what does that mean? So it's like, that's why these conversations are so insane. That's why Jordan Peterson's gotten so wrapped up into this stuff. Is because what he's talking about is the existence of God and consciousness, and we don't understand how the human mind works. And I always come back to this, but men and women truly have different experiences of reality. We have different experiences of reality, really. And it's hard for us to see that because we're in the water, we're swimming in the water, right? The water I'm swimming in is just slightly different than the water that women are swimming in. If that makes sense. This is not stuff I can change people's minds about. It's not. Because this is in the realm of the religious. What has happened is atheism took over in like the 1850s or whatever, right? Darwin wrote his book. Nietzsche wrote his stuff. Nietzsche wrote God is Dead. Atheism has been consuming society for a very long time. And once you have an atheist perspective, what happens is that the human brain is designed, we have to have the highest thing, right? The way our brains are designed, because you always have to know where you are, where you're going. You need to have a value set. Something's going to sit at the top of your value set. Whether you want to or not, right? You need something at the top of your value set. You have values whether you want to or not, because you move, you do things, so you have values. Your values have to have a highest thing. They have to. It's impossible for that not to exist. Otherwise, you're just spinning around in circles aimlessly. So if you're not spinning aimlessly, if you are moving in a direction, even metaphysically, a metaphysical, metaphorical direction here, you have a highest value. That highest value will be filled with something. And if it's not God, it will be something else. I think what happens with these ideologies, with political ideologies, and the reason why political arguments get so tense, is we're not just talking about whether a math equation is true or not. We're not just talking about how to design a bridge or something here. It turns into a religious argument. People are poking at each other's axioms that are truly the deepest held beliefs that they have. That's why when you argue with somebody about God, it gets very tense. When you argue with somebody about patriarchy, if you talk to a feminist about patriarchy, it's going to get heated. If you talk to somebody who loves BLM about systemic racism, it will get heated. You're not just having a conversation, you're having a religious conversation. These things have filled the place of religion. I think that that's what makes these ideologies so powerful. They take the place of God in your mind. I think the human mind is just designed to have a God there. That's why all the human societies constantly have gods. We're built to believe in God. We are. We're just like built that way. So it's hard to see. Like, I don't have a good grasp on this. And I keep saying Marxism isn't the right word. It's not the right word. Maybe I should just start saying it's a social pathology. It's a social pathology. And you must have been in the room where this is true. Or it might just be me, because I'm a very disagreeable person. So if I'm in a room filled with 10 people and 9 of them believe a thing and I don't, I'm going to say that. I don't care if I get yelled at by everybody. I'm going to say it. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to get yelled at by everybody, but I've been in that situation a lot of times. And I've seen how these ideas are wielded. I know what it feels like to be in that position. I know most people don't want to be in that position. Most people would rather go along with it because it's less painful. And I think that literally is just a human tendency. I mean, it makes sense. If you're in a herd of animals, you want to go with the herd. If you go against the herd, you're going to die. You're going to get eaten by the lion. So it's an actual like mammalian tendency to want to just go with the group, right? And I think that there's these like, building a civilization is already hard enough. We're not really designed to be in a society of 10 million people, right? These are new things. And so we have to have storylines that unite us. We have to have narratives, social constructs. A nation is a social construct, which is why the social constructionism is such a hard thing to talk about. It's because everything that isn't physical is a social construct. Money, nations, religions, stories, everything that we've written down, laws, the legal body, these are social constructs. Companies, institutions, colleges, universities, these are all social constructs, right? So, social constructionism isn't really, what are we talking about again, right? What are we talking about? Language is a construct. So, we have to have social constructs that unite us. We have to. We have to. American is a social construct. America is a construct. The feeling of being American is just the feeling of identifying with a narrative. It's the feeling of identifying with a social construct. And so I think that, the human mind, right? We tell stories to each other. I think that's what makes us unique. That's what makes us so powerful as animals, is that we can unite under stories and then do crazy things. We can build pyramids and build nations and have world wars and things like that because we have a bunch of monkeys who all just believe in a story that gets them to act a certain way. And they're just unstable. These stories are unstable. New storylines form and people buy into new stories. And I think just one of these storylines is the Marxism storyline. I think Marxism didn't discover it. He just labeled it. He came up with a way of labeling one of these stories that tends to happen. It's like a meme. And it's happening now. It's happening in the United States. And it's not a good thing. It's really not a good thing because it's anti-liberal. I think liberalism is like a very good story. It's the story that we're all born with a divine spark. That is at the core of liberalism, is that we all have a soul. There's a divine spark that was placed into us by God. And we should set up our social institutions to behave as such, right? The king isn't worth more than the peasant. And this Marxism thing it's just a different kind of storyline. It's saying, nah, we don't all have this divine spark. Some people are part of the oppressor class, and some people are part of the oppressed class, right? It doesn't take into account the divine spark at all. It doesn't matter that anybody has a soul. It's, are you black or are you white? If you're white, you're evil. If you're black, you're good. Or if you're white and you kneel, then you can be good. You have to kneel, though. Notice that, right? It's about power. It's about power. You must kneel. I've been in these conversations, in these arguments with people. There's only one way out. It's for me to accept what they say. They will never come to my side. Never. In one of these arguments. Never. 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 I have to kneel. I have to kneel. What do religious people do? It's the same thing. Believe in our God or we'll kill you. Kneel or we'll kill you. Right? That's what they do. They invade countries. They did this during the Crusades. They said, hey, Muslims, you are now Christian or you're dead. Right? That's exactly what's going on here. It's the same thing. Join us or die. Join us or you will be destroyed. And they're not killing people yet, but what they do is they destroy you however they can. They take away your power to speak. They take away your career. In some cases, they literally beat the fuck out of you. Look what happened to... Yeah, man. People got the shit kicked out of them during these protests. Some people did. BLM and their relationship with Antifa, whatever you want to call it, was not peaceful. I mean, they weren't peaceful, right? They burned and smashed. They beat people up. This is... The ideology is flexing, right? It's being like, what can we do? What can we do? What power can we wield right now? And it's going to come again. We just turned to 2022 today. These people still exist. They're going to wield their power again. They're going to flex their muscles again. They will, because they still exist. What's going to happen in 2024 when Trump wins? What's going to happen? What's the narrative going to be? You know, I'm not trying to make this univariate. I don't think Marxism is the only thing going on here. I don't know what the relationship is between Marxism and authoritarianism. I don't really know what the relationship is between the blue team as a whole and Marxism. It's hard for me to say. You know, a lot of this stuff is simply me grasping. There's like an inarticulate realm. I'm trying to understand human society as a whole here, right? Nobody can really tell you how this works. I'm just telling you my perspective, telling you the vague concepts that I see. And based on what I understand about history, which is, you know, an average amount for my age, I think, this is just what I see. I'm just telling my perspective. All right, 30 minutes. That's another good video. So much content. Putting up all these words. All right, yeah, January 1st, 2022. I'm done. I gotta go work on things in the house. That's partially what I'm doing, is just procrastinating, I think. That might be part of the motivation here. Anyway, see you later. Bye.